I also want to thank my interpreter, whose name is...
My name is Jody.
Oh, Jody. Thank you. Thank you very much. I thought I might give my speech in sign language tonight. But sign language is very slow.
You're awesome.
If I speak in sign language, we'll be here all night. So permit my interpreter to interpret my speech for me. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Ruderman Family Foundation, all the members of the family, for this great honor. But more than that, I want to thank the Ruderman Family Foundation for its now extension of their influence and their support in this very vital, I think, and important endeavor in terms of inclusion of people with disabilities. I have read up on the Ruderman Family Foundation, and I thank them for all they do to bring rationality and sensibility and sensitivity to human endeavors. I said to Vera earlier, I said there's that old Jewish expression, tikkun olam, right? That's what the Ruderman Family Foundation is really doing. And I know some were introduced, but I always like to know who's the fountain of all this, who starts all this. I must admit, I did not know Mort, and I just met Marcia tonight. And since I don't know you very well, I know who you are. I know you because of your progeny. And you and Mort must have been great parents to raise kids with the values that they have today. So thank you for that, Marcia. I'm glad to be here with some people. I don't know, is Sue Swenson here? I didn't see if Sue was going to be here tomorrow or not. She's with OSERS, the Office of Special Education Rehabilitation Services. Is Maria Town here from the White House? Maybe she's coming tomorrow. She's going to be here tomorrow. Well, I know Ron Suskin is going to speak after me and correct all the things I have to say, so that I want to say hi to Ron. He's been a friend and an acquaintance for a long, long time. Just two other people I'd recognize here. A young man who worked for me back in the 90s on my committee, left, became the president of the American Association of People with Disabilities, got that up and running and made it a major impact in the United States, and he left that, came back to work for me in the Senate, and then was left because I'm no longer in the Senate. And Andy Imperato now is the director of the AUCD. Andy Imperato here. And sitting next to him, as some of you ought to know too, Bill Kiernan. He runs we call the AUCD here at UMass. That's the University Centers on Disability here at UMass. Has been doing this for, what, 20 years now, Bill? Huh?
Probably twice that.
Oh, come on. You're not that old yet, Bill. But just, again, a great friend and worker in this field of inclusion of people with disabilities. And again, I'm honored to be a part of this first Inclusion Summit. I thank you for this great honor and this award. This is the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. As Jim said, I'm always talked about the father or the person, this and that, but you know, yeah, it's my name on it. I was the chief sponsor of it. I did chair the Disability Policy Subcommittee. But you know, like all good things in life, you never do these things by yourself. So many people work so hard on this in a bipartisan fashion. I know you find that hard to believe in this day and age, but I mean, people on both sides of the aisle, from all walks of life, supported this. We had the full backing of the White House and George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bush, who put his weight and his power of the presidency behind it to get it through. And people like Bob Dole and Lowell Weicker from Connecticut and others. And people on my side of the aisle, on the Democratic side of the aisle, Ted Kennedy, of course, and others. So it was a great coming together of both sides. You're right, it wasn't easy. It took a long time to get it accomplished. We had a lot of obstacles to overcome. But as my friend Lowell Weicker once said, he said, it's not so much the physical barriers that are the problem. It's the attitudinal barriers that people have about people with disabilities. And so 25 years, we've had a lot of celebrations this year, a lot of parades. I've been in a lot of parades, a lot of speeches, a lot of articles, op-eds, one which Jay and I just did in the Boston Globe. But it's not only is it a time to celebrate all the advances we've made, but I think it's also time to take stock of where we are in terms of meeting the goals of the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are 4 goals stated in law of what this bill is to do. One is full participation. Second, equal opportunity. Third, independent living. And fourth, economic self-sufficiency. They all add up to what this conference is about, inclusion, full inclusion. Now the first 3, well, we've done pretty good on them, participation. But the 4th one, economic self-sufficiency, that's the bone in my throat. That's the thing that we just haven't really accomplished. The employment rate of people with disabilities today is the same as it was 25 years ago. 25 years ago. Now, when I say employment, understand I'm talking about competitive integrated employment. Now, you'll hear that phrase a lot, competitive integrated employment. Again, when I started my political career 42 years ago, we had sheltered workshops. Kids with disabilities could work there, get paid sub-minimum wage, dead-end job, never get out of it. We're talking about jobs where a person with a disability can work right alongside someone without a disability and do that job. And I want to say at the beginning, I have never asked and will never ask any employer to ever hire a person with a disability who can't do the job. They've got to be able to do the job. They have to be able to do the job. Now, again, in the ADA, as you know, we mandated that employers had to make reasonable accommodations in the workplace. And most of those are minor things. The most important is to seek out people and to understand what they can contribute. So I'm going to just take the remainder of my time and tell you 3 stories and a postscript to those stories to indicate what I mean. One is the past, before ADA. One is sort of transitional with the ADA. And the third is a story about post-ADA, what I call the ADA generation, young people born about the time we passed it and who have grown up under the ADA. So my first story is about my brother Frank, sort of the inspiration for my work in these issues. My brother Frank became deaf as a result of spinal meningitis when he was about 5 years old. Left him profoundly deaf. And he was taken from his home, shipped halfway across the state of Iowa to the Iowa School for the Deaf, and as they always said, the Iowa School for the Deaf and Dumb. Taken out of his community. First of all, he's frightened. He can't hear anything. He could hear before. Now he can't hear anything. Taken away from his family, his friends, his community, his church, everything. Segregated. Got it? Segregated out someplace else. I'll never forget, he told me one time, he said, I may be deaf, but I'm not dumb. He said 2 important things to me in my lifetime. He said that, and he said one time, the only thing I can't do is hear. He said, now, there may be a lot of other things I can't do, but I don't know until I try them. So when he was at the Iowa School for the Deaf, he was told, when he was in high school, he could be one of 3 things. He could be a baker, a shoe cobbler, or a printer's assistant. And they asked him which one he wanted. My brother said, I don't want to do any one of those. I want to do other things. They said, well, in that case, you're going to be a baker. That was it. Horizons limited, choices taken away. And so he became a baker. He never liked it. Actually, he was pretty good at it, but he never liked it. So he was in a small bake shop in West Des Moines, Iowa. I remember he always went to work about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so this man kept coming into the bakery periodically in a week, buy some stuff, saw Frank, said hi, tried to talk to him. Frank said, I'm deaf. Here, want to write it down? Write something down. So it went on for a while like this, and he got to know my brother Frank. And so one day, he asked Frank, how do you like your job? How do you like being a baker? My brother said, I hate it. Well, that's a different sign, right? Different sign. Anyway, he said he didn't like it. So this guy said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I like working with I like machines. I like to work on machines and things like that. This guy said, well, that's my company. That's what I do. He said, why don't you come to work for me? As Mr. Delavan, his name, told me later, he said, I wrote it down. I said, why don't you come work for me? He took off his apron and started walking out the door. He thought I meant right then. So he hired him, sort of out of the goodness of his heart. Liked him, thought, well, maybe, nice guy. My brother's a nice guy. So he went to work at Delavan's, running a machine that drilled holes in jet engine. He made jet engine nozzles. It was a very intricate machine. He had all these little things he had to do to make sure it was exactly the right thing and polish them up and everything. So he went to work for him, Mr. Delavan. He employed a couple hundred people in his plant in West Des Moines, Iowa. A few months later, Mr. Delavan was sort of walking down the shop and saw Frank's foreman, his boss. And he asked him, well, how's that Harkin doing? The foreman said, oh, this guy's fantastic. It's amazing. He's always here on time. He cleans his workstation before he leaves. He gets more parts done per hour, and he never makes a mistake. It's fantastic. He never makes a mistake. So Mr. Delavan was quite surprised about this. So he wanted to find out what was so good about this guy. Well, finally, after they observed him, it dawned on him. This was a very noisy place. Banging, clanging, people yelling, drills going and stuff like that. Didn't bother my brother a bit. He just kept right on working. Didn't bother him one iota. Mr. Delavan then went out and hired more deaf people. It's a true story. Now, see, in the first instance, because he liked my brother out of the goodness of his heart, after that, it was my bottom line's better if I hire people with disabilities. 10 years after that, I was in the Navy. I was in the military. I came home for Christmas. I wasn't married then, and my brother never got married. So he asked me to go to a Christmas party with him that Mr. Delavan always threw for his workers. So I went with him. And lo and behold, unbeknownst to either my brother Frank or me, that night, Mr. Delavan got up and called Frank up to the stage and gave him a gold watch. I mean, a really nice gold watch. Because in 10 years that my brother worked there, he'd never been late for work once and never missed one day of work in 10 years. No one else could ever say that. So that got me thinking about people with disabilities and working, and choices and abilities. The next story is about Danny Piper. So I met Danny Piper in the 80s now. He was a young boy in Ankeny High School. He managed the football team, which means he took care of the uniforms and the helmets and all that kind of stuff. He acted in the school play. He was a great actor. A young kid with Down syndrome. I knew his parents, and so they invited me to come up and I'd been working on this issue, so now we're about 1987, 1988, right in there. So I started having all my hearings on leading up to the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I asked Danny to come in and testify. So Danny became the first person ever with Down syndrome to testify before a congressional committee. And we asked him, what do you want? One of the senators asked him, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I want to get out of school, and I want to go live on my own, and I want to have a job. And I'll never forget, one of the senators said, well, would your parents worry about you? And little Danny says, yeah, parents are all alike, aren't they? They just worry about their kids. I did a work day once with Danny. He got a job in a store, and he couldn't read numbers, never remembered numbers, couldn't understand numbers, but he could understand colors. So all they had to do for him filling all the shelves and stuff was just put things in color-coded, and he never made a mistake. Always showed up for work on time. My third story is Emily Hillman. Emily was born about 1990, about the time we passed the ADA Act. She was born in 89, she's 26. Emily was born with intellectual disability. And so as she grew up, with her IEP in school and everything, she was mainstreamed in school. So she got to grow up with kids that didn't have disabilities, maybe other kids that had physical disabilities. So she went through school, and wouldn't you know it, as soon as she was out of high school, she got her diploma when she was about 21. Where'd she go to work? Sub-minimum wage job, dead-end job someplace, in a sheltered workshop. She told her parents she didn't like that. She didn't want that. She wanted to do something else. And so her parents said, well, like, what do you want to do, Em? She goes by Em. She said, I want to run a coffee shop. Now, they didn't really know where she ever got that idea, but she wanted to run a coffee shop. So her parents said, well, okay, Em, but you've got to learn how to do all that. So they sent her to barista school. I didn't know such things existed. Barista school up in Minneapolis. And so Emily came back, and with her parents, went down, local bank, they borrowed some money. There was a storefront, vacant, on Main Street. Now get this, the name of the town that she lives in is Independence, Iowa. How about that? Independence, Iowa. So they got a little bank loan, borrowed some money, fixed it up, made a coffee shop out of it, bought all these fancy machines that make cappuccino and all that kind of stuff. And she opened Ems Coffee Shop on Main Street in Independence, Iowa. What was that, 5, 6 years ago, Andy? Maybe 5, 6 years ago? She now employs 6 people. 2 people with disabilities just like herself. And she told her mom, she said, I don't know how to do the books and stuff like that, so I need someone that understands all that. So she hired a person to keep track of all the books and everything, finances. Em is the front person. She's the person out front welcoming everybody, never forgets a name. Now the town, people come, they got their coffee cups there. It's become the town gathering place. And Em's doing what she wants to do, running a small business. Running a small business. So, 3 individuals, 3 stories to show the progression of where we have come a long way. Now, here's my postscript. 3 years ago, I was invited to go near here over by Hartford, Connecticut, to the Walgreens distribution center in Hartford, Connecticut. Doug Wasson was a CEO. He had a COO of Randy Lewis. They wanted me to come up there, and they had other people there, some CEOs of other companies. 400 people work in that place. 400 people work in that distribution center. 40% of the people who work there are people with disabilities. Not 4%, 40%. And as Doug Wasson said to us that morning, he said, look, I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. This is my most productive distribution center in the United States. My most productive. And so they're extended. Walgreens made a commitment to to have at least 10% of all their employees in all their stores be people with disabilities. But just with few minor modifications in workplaces, some didn't have to do any at all, and the people who work there, the people with disabilities, work right alongside everybody else. They're not in one place. They work right with people without disabilities. And as Doug Rawson said, they show up on time. They never get sick. And they don't make mistakes. I said, sounds like somebody I knew once in my lifetime. And so that's where we've got to head. We need our workforce. We need more people in our workforce. Well, this is a source of new workers for America. Young people that are ready to do these things. So we need to ask our employers to open the doors, set goals, create internships, summer jobs for our kids that are in high school. One of the biggest predictor of jobs after school is whether you had a summer job or an internship. Kids with disabilities don't ever get those. So we need employers to have these summer jobs. Last year, before I left the Senate, we passed a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I made some changes to voc rehab in there. 15% of all voc rehab money that comes into the state of Massachusetts now must be used for youth transition services to get youth into employment. So I ask employers to work with VR now to help make this happen. And one thing I'd just say is that, and I don't know if they got that slide or not, but a lot of times people have to understand that in doing something that might seem just for a person with a disability, it helps everybody, and may be the best thing to do for society as a whole. I don't know if they've got that slide. I gave them one. I don't know if they can project it or not, whoever's got that booth up there. Were you able to get that shown or not? Well, evidently not. What it is, I show it everywhere. It's a cartoon. It's a cartoon, and it's a custodian of the school is shoveling snow. There's a kid sitting, probably a young Jim Langevin, sitting off to the side in a wheelchair, and there's these other kids standing there. And the kid in the wheelchair says, "Would you please shovel the ramp?" The guy with the shovel says, "I got a lot of kids waiting to get in here. As soon as I quit shoveling, as soon as I finish the stairs, then I'll shovel the ramp." The kid in the wheelchair says, "Yeah, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in." So if we open the doors and get more people employed and include them in our workplaces, we're all going to benefit. As my friend Paul Wellstone used to always say, we all do better when we all do better. And I think that is what the Ruderman Foundation is doing. I again thank you for this award. The grant to the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement at Drake University in Des Moines will use this award to focus on this issue. And I hope that the Harkin Institute, you can Google it out there, it's kind of new, that I hope that we'll be able to partner in the future with the Ruderman Foundation to advance this cause as much as humanly possible so that in the next 25 years, we won't have 60% plus of people with disabilities out of the workforce. It won't be any more or any less than anybody else in our society. That is a goal worth fighting for. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Everybody around? Is Jack here? Jackie, come here. Come. Okay. On behalf of the Ruderman family, thank you, Senator Harkin, for those moving remarks. We are here today because of the generosity and vision of our father, Morten Ruderman. He was a man keenly aware of the importance of social justice and established the Ruderman Family Foundation to make the world more inclusive. He was especially aware of the need to include people with disabilities and empowered the foundation to play an important role in this crucial civil rights issue. The whole family, 3 generations, feels commitment to live up to our father's legacy. May this beautiful portrait be a reminder to all of us of Mort Ruderman. May his memory be for a blessing. It is in our father's honor that we set up the Morton E. Ruderman Award in Inclusion. The $100,000 award recognizes an individual who's made an extraordinary contribution to the inclusion of people with disabilities. The Ruderman Family Foundation is proud to award the 2015 Morton E. Ruderman Award in Inclusion to Senator Tom Harkin. Throughout his distinguished career in Congress, Senator Harkin has been a leading force in advancing the rights and inclusion of people with disabilities in the United States. We are proud to associate my dad's name with his leadership. Senator, you have done so much to create a more inclusive society. Thank you for that, and thank you for all the work you will continue to do to build a social movement for the next 25 years in order to advance the rights of people with disabilities and usher in a fully inclusive society.